page. So I believe that you enjoyed the last video and you're ready for what I have for you today. So today I'll be talking about African independent churches in Nigeria, and I will also talk about the impact of Christian faith on communities in Nigeria. That's what I'll be talking about, and I want you to please jot things down. You need to pause the video to jot things down. Please do so. And like I always say, you can turn on your notification button so you will know when I drop new videos. I'm going to be, if you're writing IJMB exam, I want to focus on your literature syllabus this week, so it will do you a lot of good if you can switch on your notification button so you know when I drop a video. And please subscribe to this page. Please subscribe to this page. That's a big way to say thank you to me, and I would really love you to subscribe. And also share with your friends. Don't just watch alone. Don't keep okay, share with your friends. So without taking too much of your time, let's get right into it. African independent churches in Nigeria. From the name African, that means churches in Africa, right? Independent, when someone is standing alone. So if you are being asked to define African independent churches, you can say that African independent churches are Christian churches established, led, and run by Africans. As simple as ABC. African independent churches are Christian churches established, led, and run by Africans. So these African independent churches broke away from missionary-controlled churches to create a version of Christianity that fits African culture and values. Okay, so these African independent churches, they also call them African initiated, indigenous churches, instituted churches, like that. So the reason is they decided that they don't want to be controlled by these missionary churches, right? So they created a version of Christianity that fits the African style, that fits the African culture and values. So why did they emerge? Let's look at the reason they emerged. Number one reason, rejection of racial discrimination. That's one, rejection of racial discrimination. Missionary churches often treated Africans as second-class members. So leadership positions were usually held by white missionaries. So Africans got tired of that. That's why is it that because this is a missionary church, Africans cannot lead, and then you treat Africans like they can't be at the higher class, they have to be the second class members. So rejection of racial discrimination is one of the reasons why African independent churches emerge. Okay, the number two, we can say desire for African leadership. Desire for African leadership. So Africans wanted to lead churches, and they wanted to make decisions that reflected their own cultural values. They wanted to lead churches that has this understanding of their own gospel. Like, this is the way we understood gospel, and this is how we want to run things. You understand? So they wanted to lead churches, they wanted to make decisions that reflected their own cultural values and understanding of the gospel. So I already said number one, rejection of racial discrimination. Number two, desire for African leadership. Then number three, inclusion of African culture in worship. Inclusion of African culture in worship. So this is another reason, right, why African independent churches emerged. They wanted to use African music. You already know that missionaries, they are from Britain, right? Right. So there's no way they will use African language, African drums. So they wanted to use African music, African language, drums, dancing, and even attire in worship rather than the European styles. So the fact that they want to include African culture in their worship, this is one of the reasons why African independent churches emerged. Moving on, another reason is spiritual and prophetic gifts. If you have been to Catholic church before, you know that you can't see them doing all this seeing vision in church, somebody saying that, oh, I saw this, giving prophecies. It's very solemn service. You get, I know that Roman Catholic was is one of the churches that were established by missionaries, right? So talking about why African independent churches emerged, many Africans valued visions. They valued healings, they valued dreams, they valued prophecies, which missionary churches often downplayed or rejected. They downplayed so much. So because of that spiritual and prophetic gifts that they want to experience, they want people to tell them, oh, this is what will happen to you tomorrow. This is what God is saying to you. Oh, can you interpret this dream for me? Which doesn't happen in these missionary churches. So that's another reason why African independent churches emerged. And another reason, I think I'll stop at number 5, religious freedom and identity. That's another reason. Religious freedom and identity. Independent churches gave Africans a sense of ownership and freedom to worship God in a way that was meaningful to them. So in African independent churches, you can worship God in a way that is meaningful to you. You get, unlike the missionary that you just have to just follow one process. That's how it has been forever and ever till Jesus comes. It doesn't change. But you see African independent churches, you see today they say they want to do crusade, they want to do 7 days of kinikon, 7 days of fasting and prayer, 7 days of revival and all of that. So independent churches gave Africans a sense of worship, of ownership rather, and freedom to worship God in a way that was meaningful to them. So let me take it again. I mentioned why they emerged: rejection of racial discrimination, desire for African leadership, inclusion of African culture in worship, spiritual and prophetic gifts, religious freedom and identity. Now let's look at the types of African independent churches. So we have several types. We have several types of African independent churches. Let me talk about the Aladura churches. Yeah, you would have heard of Aladura churches, right? Aladura means praying people in Yoruba. It's a Yoruba word for praying people. And these churches, what do they focus on? They focus on prayer, fasting, faith healing, dreams and spiritual visions. Example, Christ Apostolic Church. That's an African independent church. The Church of the Lord. There's actually an Aladura church called the Church of the Lord. Then Cherubim and Seraphim Movement Church. Right? So another type of African independent churches that we can say spiritual churches or Zionist churches. Like these churches emphasize healing, visions, prophecies, and even the use of water, the use of oil, and even some certain symbols like candles and incense. You already know that Celestial Church of Christ will be on that list. These churches are very popular in Nigeria. Cherubim and Seraphim, they use water, oil, candles, and incense. And we can also say there is this church, United Native African Church Mission. This church focused on African leadership and equality in the church. So mostly these Ethiopian churches actually broke away from missionary church due to racism. They just want Africans to lead. They were not comfortable with just missionaries, the whites, leading them. So talking about notable African independent churches in Nigeria, I've mentioned Cherubim and Seraphim Church. Founder is Moses Orimolade Tuolashe, and that was in, I think that should be 1925. Yeah, I guess so, 1925. And then what are the key features of Cherubim and Seraphim Church? Healing, visions, white garment, use of water and oil, prophecy, and all of that. Then we have Celestial Church of Christ, which was established by Samuel Osofa Bilewuya, 1947. And this church, what are their key features? We have spiritual cleansing, white garments, strong prophetic focus. Please read more about these churches, and you can check other videos. You can check other videos on my page where I talked about these churches. There's another video on this page where I talked about African independent churches. You can still check it again, okay? So that you can have more understanding of it. So another notable African independent church, we have Christ Apostolic Church. Founder Joseph Ayo Babalola, 1941. Key features: prayers, they pray, fasting, revivalist, preaching, healing and miracles, right? And then we have the Church of the Lord, Aladura, called Aladura Church, the Church of the Lord. Founder Josiah Olunowo Ositelu, That was in 1930. And what did they do there? Their key features: deep prayer, visions, prophetic utterances. And the United Native African Church that I mentioned this church was founded by African Christians in Lagos in 1891. It was like the first major Ethiopian church in Nigeria. So very quickly, let's look at contributions of African independent churches. What did they contribute? Contributions of African independent churches. Number one, they promoted African leadership in Christianity. That we can have indigenous, pastors leading the church. They encouraged local languages in worship and Bible reading. So you can use your language, Yoruba, in worship. You can sing Yoruba songs. They helped blend Christianity with African values in a respectful way. Okay. They also offered spiritual help through prayers, healing, and deliverance. So somebody need help, you pray for the person, deliver the person. And they made Christianity accessible to ordinary people, especially in the rural areas. They made Christianity accessible to them. Okay. Now let's look at the criticisms, right? The criticisms against this African independent churches. So one of the excesses is that some churches may overemphasize visions and neglect Bible study. You see that some churches, what they just do more is, let's do 7 days revival, and they neglect the Bible study. And then a few engage in unverified healing practices or materialism. You see people engaging in healing that is not real. So all these African independent churches, not all of them, pardon me, some of them, they are really, really, really not genuine. It's just for maybe the purpose of making money. So that's another concern. All right. And then many of them have grown strong and contributed significantly to faith in Nigeria. That is not a concern, actually. That is just me buttressing my point that even though we have these concerns about them, many of them have actually grown strong and they have contributed significantly to faith in Nigeria. So quick summary before I move to the next topic. I mentioned that African independent churches are churches founded by Africans for Africans. These African independent churches broke away from missionary churches for freedom and cultural expansion. And these churches emphasize prayer, healing, prophecy, and even African leadership. And I mentioned key examples like C&S, Celestia, CAC, Aladura Church. These African independent churches contributed greatly to African Christianity growth. Okay, so let's quickly move on to the second topic I want to talk about in this video, and that will be all. I want to talk about the impact of Christian faith on communities in Nigeria. The impact of Christian faith on communities in Nigeria. So number one, educational development. Yes, educational development. So Christian missionaries were among the first to establish schools in Nigeria. If you have watched what's it called now, the videos that I did earlier, you see where I mentioned how they established schools even while they were at Sierra Leone. So Christian missionaries were among the first to establish schools in Nigeria. They also introduced Western education. They built primary and secondary schools and even universities, right? Many top schools and universities today, were built by Christians, even missionaries. Like now, if you have heard of Babcock University, they are Christian. Is a Christian-owned university, and although this one is not owned by a missionary, Covenant University by Bishop Boyedepo. So you can see that Christian, the Christian faith has a great impact, on communities in Nigeria. So we also have schools like CMS Grammar School in Lagos, St. Anne's School in Ibadan. Queen's College was also founded by Christian Mission. So in case you want to use examples to buttress your point, you can mention all these schools, right? Then number two contribution or impact, we can say healthcare and social services. So Christian missions built the first hospitals and clinics in many areas. especially in the rural communities. Because remember I mentioned that they give free healthcare, so that they can access the people and preach to them, right? So they also provided free or affordable healthcare, like I mentioned, maternity care and health education. So they tell the people on this is how to do, this is what to eat, this is how to take care of yourself. So churches till today still run hospitals, they run rehabilitation centers and even care homes, right? If you want to give example, you can cite the Catholic hospitals like St. Mary's Hospital, then ECWA, yeah, and even Baptist medical centers in various states. I remember there's an hospital in Ogbomoso in Oyo State owned by, I think, Baptist also. So you can cite that as example. Please, if you are here to subscribe, kindly subscribe right now, please. Thank you for watching. All right. Number 3, we have moral and ethical influence. We are looking at the impact of Christian faith on communities in Nigeria. So we have moral and ethical influence. So we can say that Christian teachings promote love, right? And that's why we have peace in society. Because even when you want to fight, your pastor already preached on Sunday that you should love, you should not fight, So Christian teachings promote love, honesty, promote forgiveness, promote humility, promote peaceful coexistence. And then church teachings also help reduce social vices like stealing, lying, cultism, and even violence in the society. So it has a great impact, right? And then many Christian groups organize youth seminars, counseling, marriage courses to even strengthen values in families and society. So you can see that, Christianity has so much impact on the community. And the 4th one, we can say peace building and conflict resolution. So Christian leaders and churches, they often serve as mediators during tribal, religious, and political conflict. When they have issues, you see what they say, Pastor Adeboye went to visit so person, or I remember there was a time where Obasanjo went to see Oyedepo with another politician like that. So Christian leaders, all the churches, they often serve as mediators during all this political conflict, tribal war and all of that. And one thing that Christian churches do is they preach tolerance and forgiveness. They help to maintain peace among diverse groups in the society. That's why you see that we have the Christian Association of Nigeria. Any small issue, they take it to CAN, and what does CAN do? CAN often speaks up for peace during elections or crises. They don't want people to riot. So that's another major impact, peace building and conflict resolution. And we can also talk about economic empowerment. Yeah, we are talking about the impact of Christian faith on communities in Nigeria. We can talk about economic empowerment. Many churches offer skills training. Yes, many churches offer skills training, business seminars. I remember my church still held one finance seminar that was like 2 weeks ago. So many churches offer all these things. They even give financial aid to members, and then some provide scholarships. I remember there's a bishop here in Nigeria that sent people's children to university. So some provide scholarship, some even provide grants, right? Some support startup, to empower poor and struggling families. And there's also faith-based cooperative and thrift schemes to help members save and invest, right? And let me just add few more, then that will be all. Okay, so we also have economic empowerment. Many churches, I've mentioned that, I've talked about that. Charity and social welfare. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Charity and social welfare. So Christian faith also promotes helping the poor, widows, orphans, and the sick. Churches organize food drives, shelter programs, free medical outreaches, and even school aid. I remember when COSA would give food to people. So this kind of reduces the burden on families and promote community care. So you can say that impact of the Christians on the community, charity and social welfare, and promotion of unity and cultural transformation, You know, Christianity has helped bridge ethnic and regional divides. You know, they bring people of different backgrounds together. You see in a church, you see a northerner, a southerner, everybody in the church, and they are, you know, living well. You know, so sometimes it clash with traditional beliefs, you know, but it still also help replace all these harmful practices. Like, remember the killing of twins, missionaries help them now, you get, right? And all these human sacrifices. So today many communities celebrate a blend of cultural identity and Christian values. Okay, so let me end with this. Another impact, you know, is leadership and nation building. Christian faith encourages servant leadership, that people should lead. They encourage justice, they encourage integrity. So many Christian leaders have played roles in governance, education, reform, health, and media. You know, and churches raise voices against corruption, injustice, and oppression, you know, shaping public opinion. So we can say that Christianity has positively shaped Nigerian communities through education, healthcare, moral development, and peace building. You know, despite challenges, Christianity still continues to uplift lives, promote values, and contribute to what? To national progress. So a quick recap on everything I've said. A quick recap. I said areas, and then number one area I mentioned education, impact of Christian faith in education, built schools, promoted literacy and higher education. Then another area, health. You know, what are the impact? Hospitals, clinics, health campaigns. Then we have moral values. They promoted peace, honesty, and discipline. Then I mentioned peace building. They mediated conflict, preached forgiveness and tolerance. And I also mentioned economic empowerment, you know, skills training, job aid, cooperatives. And we also have charity and welfare, where they cared for the poor, the sick, widows, and orphans. And we have cultural reforms, where they fought harmful traditions, promoted dignity of human life. And we also have leadership. They promoted integrity and servant leadership. That will be all in this video. I hope you found it very useful, and please do give me a thumbs up. You know, thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye.